The morning spread over the area. Sunny bunnies were playing catch-up in the winter garden where two young people were sitting. Their silence was broken by the sound of the piano. He must have moaned from loneliness, prompting them to talk. And the lady began the story of her nocturnal journey, which she had dreamed, a journey beyond the body. The young man, who was engrossed in the book, said that it was nonsense, but she could tell if it would lighten her impression. Although he is not an oracle, he will listen. At which the lady laughed and said that she did not believe in oracles. It was just a legend to raise the authority of the royal family. And the young man insisted that her dream was nonsense. Then the lady said that she called him just to spend time together. He was still answering her coldly. She couldn't hold back and started a story about how she saw herself from the side. And then her soul drifted to the coast, and her body remained in bed. There was complete darkness around, and she only saw him nearby, the only one who was nearby. And again, the young man coldly replied that this was nonsense, since he was the owner of the magic tower and could not be near her body, as if she were her murderer. The lady saw that he was not inclined to talk, but she tried to convey to him that she felt herself only in his company, but it was all in vain. She had started this conversation before, and now she said that if she were a seer, she would ask the universe if he would ever love her? The question infuriated him. The young man hastily got up, but the lady hurried to stop him, asked him not to go. Ring Escadion. That was the name of the owner of the magic tower. He was always gloomy, always in thought, and wherever he went, he always had the books he was studying with him. The ring stopped, could not help but obey the heiress of the great power of the north, the reincarnation of Ingram. However, she asked to forget about the titles. The conversation did not stick at all. She wanted to tell that she appreciated everything unusual, and he was unusual, but Kiltz didn't want to hear those things. But he listened. The girl continued that in a dream. He leaned over her and she felt his warmth. He saved her, and she followed him step by step wherever he went. So in the dark she followed him to the sea into which the star had fallen. And she asked if he knows how the story ended, because he is a magician and should know. The ring was silent, and the lady laughed again and asked if he could love her. Sometimes he did not understand where it was a joke and where it was serious, so he did not answer. The small village on the shore of the vast sea has been standing for more than 1 century. The history of the inhabitants was rich in stories of truth and fables. Far from the village there were meadows. A little girl was running on them, and friends were nearby, who made fun of her humor. The girl was looking for flowers, special flowers. Marigolds, her father once loved them, remembered their smell and smiled, so she needed to find these flowers. Finally found. Among many others, I found exactly marigolds. I was incredibly glad that I could see his smile even for a moment. The girl looked at the sky. The sun was at its zenith, and she had to go back so that her father would not be angry. Closing her eyes from the bright light, she turned around. When she opened her eyes, blinded, she saw a crow falling to the ground. I looked closely. It was a young man. The girl was very surprised, came closer and anxiously bent over the boy, turned the edge of the hood and tried to understand if he was alive. The young man was dressed in dark-colored clothes, and a star clasp shone on his chest. The child had never seen anything like this before. Father did not have such a fastener. And then she noticed that a tear rolled down her face. The girl pushed him lightly, trying to wake him up. The old man got up so quickly that he scared the little girl. She jumped back and stared silently with huge eyes, not knowing what to do. When he looked around, he asked if her name was Rosa. She didn't say a word, and he grabbed her by the shoulders and questioned her once more. She screamed in fright. The stranger untied his wrists and let the girl go, and she quickly ran, frightened, to the house to her father. He did not question the child anymore, because she was very frightened and simply followed her trail. The path led to the village. The girl's name was Aja, that was her father's name. She quickly closed the door and only exhaled that she was safe. She heard her father's cry. He was angry that she was not there. The father shouted so much that the house was a mess and she was walking, that she began to stutter. She said she wanted to bring his favorite flowers. The bottle in his hand and the empty bottles around the room spoke for themselves. And this time it was not without a slap. He made a face and ordered to clean up. Asha meekly took up cleaning, and her father kept calling her useless and shoved her with his boot every time she passed by him. She quietly cleaned up and thought that when she brought flowers, his mood would improve. Maybe if she didn't linger near a stranger, her father would be happy. Asha headed for the water and just opened the door. She saw a stranger from the forest. She shouted loudly, and the irritated father came closer. The girl asked the young man why he is here. Why is he chasing her? How did he find their house? The stranger did not answer. Silently entered the room and looked around. The picture did not move him, rather disappointed him, and he exhaled heavily. The drunken father, barely able to move, shouted that it was illegal, that he had no right to interfere, and who was he anyway? Began to threaten. The stranger did not pay attention to the threats. In a quiet, even voice, he asked how old the girl was. And when he heard that she was 10, he said that he would take her. The father rushed into the fight. Threatened the stranger, the girl grabbed the floor to pull him away so that he would not be harmed. The uproar was unbelievable. Taking a few steps forward, the young man threw a bag of gold coins on the table, and suddenly there was such silence that you could hear the footsteps of a mouse under the floor. All these coins were reflected in the eyes of the blinded father of the unfortunate girl. So many he can't even count. But the stranger told about the arrangement. With these funds you can buy a lot, you can even buy a big castle, but they are not enough for this girl. Father did not understand, but he listened. The little girl sat dumbfounded by the bed and could not believe that her own father was now selling her. It's definitely a dream. It can't be, because she loves him so much. The young man continued to ask whether he treated his daughter well. The first question, whether he appreciated her, remained unanswered. The second question, whether he beat the girl, also remained silent. And with each such question, the young man turned out a handful of gold. When asked if he was insulting, the father lowered his head, although he was drunk, and he understood that the pile of coins would become even smaller. Did he make sure she was full, or did he watch what she was eating? And the stranger's hand swept the coins off the table. After all the questions asked, he held out his hand, which had several coins on it, and said that this was all he could give for such care of the girl. What is alive? A pile of lost gold covered his father's eyes. He began to shout how he was hurt, but the stranger firmly whispered that he spared his life. Greedily hiding the coins, the next bottle was already in his eyes. Asha could not believe that she was sold before her eyes, but she did not want to go with that young man. Approaching her father, she wanted to hug him, but he pulled away and told her to go with a stranger and she would have everything she wanted. Asha begged not to give her away, promised to bring wine and do all the household chores. But he roared and pushed her so that she rolled back. Father shouted for her to immediately stop leaning and drive. Then he sat down next to her, apologized, and told her that she was not his daughter, that he had found her with children and wanted to sell her, but no one was looking for her. So she remained. The package in which she was lying was made of expensive fabric, and he thought that a noble's child would give a lot for him. He continued to talk about how he injured his leg and was unable to work. He blamed her for everything, that's why he treated her that way. But now with these coins he can start a new life and she has to go. When Asha listened to her father, she agreed to go with a stranger. She realized that she was never needed but tried so hard to please her father. The young man, meanwhile, found a carriage that would take them to the castle. Seeing Asha in this form, he yelled at his father to dress the child at least a little. The stranger gently took the girl by the shoulders and reassured her that now nothing bad would happen to her. She would be under his care. Moladik said that the carriage is uncomfortable, so they will change it to another one later. It was the same for Asha. Firstly, she had never been in a carriage. Secondly, I sold it. It seemed that she saw her father's true face for the first time today. She was only interested in whether he had loved her at least once, but it was no longer important. Finally, the young man called out to his father to stop drinking and thanked him for raising this girl. The carriage began to move away. The little girl turned and shouted farewell words to her father, but they were drowned in the screeching of the wheels of the old carriage. Asha understood that she would not return here again. The unknown was frightening. She was left alone, and she quietly blew her nose, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. The young man, without taking his eyes off the road, asked why she was crying so much for her father because he treated her very badly. And I received an answer that no matter how he behaved, he was the only close person. The road seemed really far, so Asha broke the silence. She asked the stranger what his name was, and he said that she could call him Kilts. Asha remembered how her father sometimes boasted to his friends that he wanted to sell her into slavery. She did not know this word, but they would probably give more there. It was really immeasurable at such a time she thought about her father, although as it turned out not her own. I thought, maybe she really is from a wealthy family. Kilt saw that she was sad and lonely, decided to support the conversation, asked her name. The girl from the east answered that her name is Asya Konyak. The carriage rolled along the path in the incredibly sunny forest. The wheels creaked, swaying to the beat of the creaking and clattering of hooves, reminiscent of a storm at sea. Asha thanked Kiltz for choosing her out of many children in the village. She is glad that her father now has money, because he is kinder with money. The young man was stunned by such words. How much this man has devalued this little girl that she is glad he took her away. I remembered the mess in her house and what to do with the child. He simply equated her with a thing. And these thoughts made his fists clench and his teeth grind. The girl was frightened. She thought that Kiltz was angry with her, but he hurried to calm her down and began to tell where they were going. He told about the country of Karancia, that it was possible to reach it through endless prairies, and to this story and the rocking of the carriage, the child fell asleep. We stopped in the nearest city. Kiltz said that the town is small, but you can relax. Asha looked around and saw the biggest city in her life. The huge square on which the wheels stopped creaking was surrounded by shops, and the young man said that he needed to buy her clothes, and he stretched out his hand, pointing to the showcase in which exquisite clothes were flaunted. One is better than the other. Of course, the girl wanted a new outfit, but she denied it, said that she would wash her own, she had no money for new ones. But Kiltz firmly took her hand, saying that he would pay, and led her to the store. Asha resisted, refused. She believed that she should give the money that was paid for her to her father, and here also the dress. She believed that the debts were growing. The travelers were met by a cheerful maid who happily told them what rooms they had for relaxation. The young man ordered 2 rooms and 2 meals. The road is far and tiring. The screeching of the wheels of the old boat left its melody in the head of every traveler. Climbing the big stairs, the girl looked around and wondered what kind of buildings there were, and also thought that she would also owe money for all this.
But the biggest surprise was when Kiltz opened the door and said that this was her room. I did not expect such a clean and spacious room even in my dreams.
Huge windows, incredible amount of light. Such high ceilings, you can inhale to your full chest, and there is no persistent caustic stench of alcohol. The ring closed the door, telling her to rest. Asha huddled in her little corner and was afraid to move. She does not know the word rest. It took some time before she could put aside her slip and believe that it was true for her. Then there was a knock on the door. Through the open door, a maid who had come to collect a bath for the girl peeked in. When everything was ready, Asha called. Although it all seemed like an incredible dream, Asha still went to the bathroom. She was curious about what that room looked like. The room turned out to be quite spacious, and the water in the bath was collected by itself. At home, she had to carry water from the well. Asha plunged into the warmth of the white marble. The maid asked if she needed help, but the girl refused. At home, she did everything herself. I missed it. I never washed in hot water at home. From behind the door came a voice. Clean clothes will be left nearby. He was sent by Kiltz and asked to go down in them. Asha thought that she argued in vain about buying new clothes. It was nice. I thought about Kiltz, how caring he is. Descending the stairs into the living room, I was enchanted by the setting. How light, spacious, and incredibly clean. She was surprised by the cleanliness in every room. Kiltz was sitting at the table reading when he heard timid footsteps on the stairs. Looking up, he saw a girl who was slowly descending. Approaching timidly, Asha thanked for the bath and new clothes. And the young man, returning to reading the book, replied that it was temporary, and they would buy other clothes. When she heard about the new expenses, she denied that these clothes were enough and that she would repay the debt as soon as she earned money. The ring was quite surprised. He replied that there was no need to return it, and the little girl began to list what she can do. She cleans perfectly. She can look after the children. She continued to remember what else she can do, and in the end she said that she would be able to earn him every last penny. The young man could not stand it and closed the book. After a second's pause, he said that it was unpleasant for him to hear it from her. And Asha fell silent and did not know how to react. Tears rolled down and filled his eyes. And Kiltz, looking at her, tried to apologize. He didn't want to say that at all. The situation was diffused by the maid who brought lunch. She chirped cheerfully, seeing Asha in different clothes. She said that she looked like a noble young man. There was a large number of various dishes on the table, and Asa's throat tightened when they said that they could all be eaten. She swallowed her lunch with both cheeks. When asked if it was so tasty, she just shook her head in the affirmative, unable to speak because of her full mouth. After swallowing, she said that it was very tasty. While the girl devoured morsel after morsel of everything on the table, Kiltz told me that he had found a comfortable carriage with a covered top for traveling across the prairie. Asa was unfamiliar with this concept, and the young man explained that it is possible to reach the mainland only through the prairie. It will take about a month. A whole month on the road. You need to prepare a lot of water and food for yourself and the horses so that they don't need anything. The maid was delivering lunch to the other guests, so she could hear their conversations as she passed the tables. Approaching Asi, she said that there are now monsters. Seeing that the girl froze, she continued that there are merchants sitting at another table, and they also have to go in the same direction, so they can unite. But Kiltz refused. He loved silence too much to share the path with such a noisy company. The maid smiled and offered to take at least a sheep to distract the monster. But Kiltz also refused. He has another plan. Asa had an incredibly rich imagination. When the young man told about the plan, she imagined that she would be the monster's victim, and that's why he chose her. It took my breath away. The changes in behavior were so obvious that he asked what was wrong with her, and the girl was quick to assure him that everything was fine. The carriage was ready in the morning. She had never slept so sweetly. The bed was covered with clean, starched linen. The duvet was so soft. But she remembered her thoughts from yesterday well, and the fact that Kiltz cannot be trusted was clearly imprinted. The maid came out to wish a safe journey. She called Aja a girl who looked like a young man. When her father cut her hair, she really looked like a boy. The ring waved its turrets and the carriage moved from its place, gaining speed with every second as they rolled along the path trodden by the wheels. Asya drove and trembled. For more than an hour, the surrounding landscapes were changing. The forests, which had no edge, were particularly frightening, but further on there were meadows blooming with various herbs. They were soothing. Asha had never seen anything like this and was very impressed. When Kiltz asked her if she liked the prairie, she replied that it was incredibly quiet here. Later, she added that it was very spacious. She looked around and admired the beauties that were inaccessible to her before. Previously, there was not enough time for this. Their journey was long, and Ring told Asa about the wonders of the mainland, and the prairie was one of these wonders. He also talked about the magical engineering train. Told about its uselessness because you can't use magic in the prairie, but it is very fast and moves around other parts of the continent. Asha listened with pleasure. These were new discoveries, and the fact that the world was so limitless was amazing. Kiltz offered a map of the world, showed where they were now. The map was so small, and the land around it was vast. What surprised her the most was that anyone could go to any corner of the world. While the new information was trying to settle in the girl's memory, silhouettes appeared on the horizon. It was strange to meet someone in the boundless space of the steppes. When they looked at each other, the strangers asked if they were coming from Liège, the city where they were vacationing. The ring answered yes. Asha hid behind the young man's back and, peeking out, saw in the cart his legs covered with a shroud. The one who was lying there was not alive. One of the strangers told them to return to the city. The monsters they met were ahead. Not all of them survived. Weapons are required if they dare. Kiltz meticulously asked where the strangers were from and noted that they were not from Nirmaz. Because corpses are not brought there, there is an above-ground burial. He was surprised but said that Aster is really from another city. They are merchants who got into trouble while looking for a trade route. The ring told them in a low voice not to worry and that they would be fine. But strangers looked at him like a nobleman who could not do anything. The strangers began to move away. But the words of one reached the travelers. We will see. It sounded as if threatening. Asya was even more frightened. The girl wrapped herself in a blanket and sat like that for half the way, quietly, silently, without moving. The sun has already disappeared. Its place was taken by the moon with its girlfriends. Stars. They shone brightly, but this glow was alarming. A strange premonition came over the ring. This had never happened before. Something unpleasant was felt. He offered to stop here, called Asha. Yvonne only now came out of her hiding place. After lighting the lantern, they sat down and kept silent. Everyone was thinking about something different, and everyone had many questions that they did not ask. Kiltz broke the silence, asked the girl if she was afraid of monsters, to which he received an unexpected answer. Asya said that he is scarier to her than a monster. Probably the young man did not hear the girl's answer. He said that the monsters appeared because of those strangers, or someone else from Aster. I thought about their desire to lay a railway line in Nirmaz, and were therefore dissatisfied. But they met scouts, because they had no goods. Asha listened to the thoughts. I wondered why they wanted to deceive them. Indeed, merchants must have goods, but why cheat? Everyone knows that magic is unacceptable in the prairie. Monsters appear only when people use magic. They protect the territory from people. He looked up at the girl. Asha sat huddled against the edge of the carriage. Kiltz promised to protect her, and there was no reason to be afraid. But the fear did not disappear. The rain, which had been pouring all this time, began to subside. The young man said that now it was necessary to rest. They would pass in the morning. It was difficult to fall asleep, and lying down, she thought about all the events of the last few days. So much has happened that there have not been so many changes in a lifetime. She looked at the young man because there were no horses or carts. How did he get to the village? He also said not to listen to anything from the outside. He is strange. Why did he come then, and why exactly did she find him? She turned from side to side, trying to fall asleep. And then she began her name. Quietly, then louder. The whisper seemed to make its way through the canvases that wrapped the carriage. The girl covered her ears. This shouldn't happen here, there's not a soul around, but the voice made its way straight into her head and was already sounding inside. He had already become so familiar and called to go with him. It seemed to be the voice of his father. But when he found her and called after him, she followed his call. She looked at the rest of the sleeping ring and left. The voice beckoned, said that money is not important, that's why he came for her, she is priceless. The voice did not leave her head, whispering that her father had come to save her, and she ran with all her might to the call. Approaching the silhouette that seemed to be her father, she realized that it was not him, and with a scream she ran in the other direction, trying to get to the carriage as quickly as possible. She was indescribably scared. Now she couldn't remember where she was running from and started screaming for the ring to help and protect her. He heard her call, but what Asha saw now did not fit in her little head. The ring was floating above the ground. His eyes were filled with incredible light, and lightning emanated from his palms. Even in the most fantastic dream, Asha did not see such a thing. First of all, Kiltz protected Asha by enveloping her in an impenetrable bullet, and then he took on her fears. Little by little, the girl began to understand that she had seen a sorcerer. I didn't even suspect that this was possible. Kiltz approached her, called out, and did not hear an answer or any reaction. She simply froze. He said he thought she was going to run away, but she was still silent. She was so frightened by everything that was happening that the young man had to give her a good shake to come to her senses. When she came to her senses, she kept repeating that she didn't want to run away. She asked for forgiveness, she really didn't want to, and Kiltz pressed her to him so hard that she fell silent. He kept repeating that he had no right to lose her again, now that he had found the bell. Asha saw tears in his eyes and such indescribable pain. He said that he was afraid that he had lost her forever. And then she asked if he was so poor because he bought her to sacrifice to a monster. The young man did not expect to hear such nonsense. The ring knelt before her and told her that everything was wrong. These coins are worth nothing compared to her happiness. He wants to make her happy. He added that he would give the whole continent to have her by his side. She is so important to him. The girl listened and did not interrupt. The young man held out his open palm and asked to believe him, and most importantly, to trust. Asha agreed and gave him her hand. Then he heard someone asking him to find her. He couldn't say yet, but it was someone who valued her above all else. So he has to protect her. Asha looked with her big eyes and said that there was nothing to give in return, to which Kiltz replied that he was paid enough and smiled. The girl was afraid that he would not be angry, but the ring explained that he had put a protective spell on her that worked, and he did not tell anything so as not to scare her. Mala said that she heard her father calling her, so she followed his call. She didn't want to run away at all. I burst into tears. All the pain in my heart spilled out. After all, she saw and understood from the very beginning that he would not take her away. But she so wanted to believe that she was needed, and, perhaps, he had at least once loved her. The young man did not restrain her. After waiting for her to calm down, he wiped her tears, wrapped her in a blanket, and, weak from the events, quietly began to doze. He reassured her that there was no ghost in the mirror and she could rest. She was surprised by this, but after sitting down, she thought how warm he was and smelled of the sun. He explained that the mirror apparition lures people with words they want to hear. The girl asked if he heard any call from this ghost, and Kiltz remembered what he had heard, but he told her that no one called him, and he carried it with bows to the carriage, and it curled up like a little kitten and felt completely safe. Now she trusted him. Just woke up, decided to study the map. I looked at how the countries were located. I looked intently at the names of the cities. Today they rested in a hotel. Kiltz watched her admiration carefully. then turned the map over, noting that this was how to read a map and that he would teach her this art later. He showed a continent that looks like a dragon, and told a legend about how a huge dragon chased the golden bird Ingram. But the dragon fell to the ground in this chase, and his life was cut short, and a continent was formed in that place. And we now live on this continent. The interested girl asked if the dragons were really that big, because it was incredible, to which the young man replied that it was only a legend. Dragons are smaller. She wanted to know what size they really were, and Kilt said that it was somewhere like a lake near which they were located. The questions were endless, and then one more sounded. The girl was interested in where her home was. He quenched his thirst for knowledge and showed the place of her birth on the map. Did she ask to tell me how it was at home? But Kilt said that there is nothing good there now and they are going to fix the situation. It was getting dark in the courtyard and Kilt suggested returning to the hotel. The girl agreed, but tomorrow she will swim in the lake. Both left in a good mood. Returning through the empty street, they heard a commotion. The young man chose this place for the night so that it was not crowded, but a lot of people gathered here. Before the entrance to the hotel, the carriage overturned and all the guests were already unhappy that they could not get inside. It's probably for a long time. Throwing on the hood so that no one could see how he was saying the spell, he whispered quietly. All the onlookers suddenly perked up when the carriage began to rise, and so quickly. And Kilts and the girl quickly and imperceptibly slipped past the open door of the hotel, before the rest of the guests had yet recovered from what they had seen. Walking through the large living room, she asked quietly how he uses magic. The young man said he woke up after 10,000 years and can now cast spells. She was amazed by such an answer and only enviously looked at the young man with her huge eyes, and from surprise they seemed even bigger. Their conversation was interrupted by a majestic lady. Refined clothes and the smell that wafted from her in a plume indicated her status. They asked to give her a moment. However, the young man sharply replied that she was interfering and that he did not have time for communication, without even raising his head so that the lady understood that she was not happy. But the lady did not even think of going and thanked him for his help, because it was he who helped her with the carriage. She said that her father-in-law is a sorcerer, and she knows magicians well. And although Kilts was clearly removed, she continued that even the noble wizards of Aster cannot do without auxiliary means. She asked how he managed. Once again, I thanked him for his help and asked where he studied and where he lives. It seemed that these questions were never exhausted. The lady wanted to invite them to dinner as a thank you for their help. The ring said in an even colder low voice that he had done nothing and had nothing to thank for. But the stranger did not calm down. Now she turned her attention to the girl and asked if she was a student of this sorcerer. Asya opened her mouth in surprise. Then Kilts raised his head and sternly said that the girl was his niece and he hoped the interrogation was over. To which the lady apologized and said that a girl of the same age as her child wished her a good trip. Asya was surprised at the word child, but when she looked closely, she noticed that someone was standing behind the lady. Red hair blended with the color of the dress. And then he jumped out. In a second, he was next to Asi and solemnly announced that next year he will enter Yefrangir and will also become a sorcerer. Having given this information, the boy turned sharply and ran after his mother. Asya asked what the ring was, and Kilts thoughtfully muttered that it was a state school of magicians in Aster for noble children. Such news shocked the girl. Can children also learn, and for this do not need to sleep for 10,000 years? And she also learned that ordinary children also study. She leaned on her little hands and said dreamily that she would also like to be able to cast spells. And then she wondered if Kilts was happy when he was studying. And he sadly answered that he never felt happiness during all his studies. And they fell silent. A voice from behind the screen said that he had never worn such clothes. And when the screen opened, the shop assistants were surprised by what they saw. But it's just a doll. Asha looked at her reflection in the mirror and was incredibly surprised herself. Was it really her? Does she really look like that? And then the fitting of another and another. And the saleswoman chirping how beautiful she is, how beautiful she is. The fabrics are exquisite. The laces are airy, until the head spins. Here she heard a small voice saying what a wonderful dress it was, and asking her father to buy it, and her father agreed. Asya saw how happy the girl was. I remembered how she used to walk and her father never pleased her with anything. Never bought anything, only shouted and pushed her. And said that she was not worth anything. Could she at least once even dream of a tie for such an outfit? Is there even one stone for these ornaments? Not worth anything. Heard again. The saleswoman stopped her train of thought with a question. What did you like the most? But Asha could not answer. She liked everything. Kiltz appeared at the door of the shop. Seeing Asha, he froze. How beautiful she was. She couldn't choose an outfit, so he said they'd take everything. Remembering how he told that he was looking for her even now. He buys her everything, worries, he is so kind to her. She did not expect that one day she would be so appreciated. Her thoughts were interrupted by the ring, which carried all the notes and boxes that the saleswoman had packed. He asked why she was sad, and she said that everything was fine. We went further. The path lay past other shops. There were various jewelry, a salon with handbags next to ribbons, but Asha refused to buy anything. All of a sudden, she froze at the window with a doll that magically repeated phrases after the hostess. He offered to buy a doll, and Asha agreed. All her toys at home, dirty things that had to be washed and shards from broken dishes that the doll was already there, she didn't even dream of. After shopping, they sat next to each other and were silent. Each of them was silent about his own. Here Kiltz asked if she wants to see her father. I was tormented by the thought that he bought her for money and was ready to buy her everything in the world, if only she were happy. And Asha replied that nothing was needed. The moment of truth has arrived. The young man asked to be honest with him and say everything that she thinks, and she said that she likes everything and smiled. Here they heard footsteps approaching. The ring stood up abruptly, and the stranger suddenly said that it was a wonderful meeting. Approaching closer, he joyfully asked why Kiltz stopped in this village. The meeting is really unexpected. He said something about the family trip and reminded about the fulfillment of the wish that Kiltz owed him, and kept getting closer, while the young man tried to hide Asha with him. Although the stranger seemed to be smiling, the voice sounded unfriendly. The girl understood that her protector was wary of the stranger. She was silent. When the stranger asked who his companion was and wanted to get to know Kiltz, he sharply replied that it did not concern him, but he stubbornly insisted. Approaching closer and closer, he wondered what her name was, where she was from. Finally, he came very close, began to push Kiltz to see the girl. And then he turned to Asha, asked if she could tell who she was. The girl watched in horror and thought that at first glance the grandfather seemed kind. Grandfather kept talking, called her, asked her to come to him, and when he reached out to Asha, Kiltz grabbed his hand and warned that he would teach her etiquette. Strangers did not believe that Kiltz would hurt him. But the grip was quite tight, and after a few seconds it became harder to bear the pain. Clenching his teeth, the stranger hissed that Kiltz remained as it was. The girl looked and thought that her hand was about to crack. The ring pushed the man away and said that he, Count Kaizu, has no right to call him by his name because only his friends call him that. The count began to walk away, but finally said that they would see each other very soon, that it was a wonderful reunion. The young man shot him an angry look. Asya remembers how Kiltz protected her from the mirror ghost. He was focused, cold, and the meeting with the count annoyed him. She had never seen him like that. He returned to the girl and apologized that she had to go through this, but she simply asked who it was. The young man hugged her to him and told her not to worry about anything, and he thought about the count's words, it seemed to Kaizu, that he knew something about him. Such an unexpected meeting left an impression on the walk, and they decided to return to the house where they stopped for the night. They walked through empty streets. Suddenly, an incomprehensible noise came from the nearby street, and Kiltz picked up the girl in his arms. And as soon as he did it, the figure of a young man appeared in front of them. He greeted, calling the ring Iscardion, and asked why he was here, on the continent. Kiltz was surprised to meet Altman. Altman was one of the graduates of the Ivory Tower, as was the ring of Iscardion. Count Kaizu's voice coming from behind asked if they were happy to meet. Kiltz and Altman were not friends during their studies, and now they are not very friendly. Kaizu slyly approached and said that they looked alike, and that he should let the girl go, give her away. But Kiltz replied that he would never do that. But the count no longer disguised himself as a good grandfather. He said that his family always gets what it wants and will get it now.
The young man whispered that Kaizu still doesn't have an iota of dignity. I understood that a clash could not be avoided this time.
He reminded the count how he had already been punished, and he replied that he had even prayed to Abbot Efrangir, but he was inexorable. Having stolen a piece of dragon magic, he will not be able to get the upper hand, so he made an agreement with the Altmans and they will defeat him together. Kiltz carefully lowered the girl to the ground and whispered that she should go home. that she would be met there and that she should not be afraid of anything. The little boy humbly nodded his head and asked when he would come too. The young man said not to worry, he would follow her. Ran. Of course, a lot of thoughts were running through her little head. She was worried that everything would be fine, but she believed that her protector would overcome everyone. She ran as fast as she could, sure that he was behind. She opened her eyes. Starry sky. Why the starry sky? She could not understand anything. Everything she saw was blurry. And then I saw a boy. He was holding a lantern, but why is he here and here? Where is he? I asked myself mentally. The boy with the lantern asked how she was feeling. She was lying under a tree under the open sky. In some places there were blood stains on it. The girl remembered how they encountered the Count and his supporter, and she asked about the ring he was supposed to follow. But the boy said that he is not there yet. He held out his hand and the girl stood up, then added that he hoped for his return in the near future. To distract Asha, he asked about the trip, whether she liked it. The girl did not know how to communicate with her peers, so she answered briefly what she liked. The boy smiled and said that it was time for them to go because grandfather was waiting. Asha asked what kind of grandfather he was, and how did he know her? And many more questions followed. He replied that she is a star. What did he mean? I didn't understand why Zirka, because her name is Asya. These and other thoughts were confused in her head, but she walked in silence. When they reached the house, they stopped. The boy knocked on the heavy oak door and footsteps were heard behind it, and then an old man's voice asked, "Who was knocking?" The door creaked open and a gray-haired handsome man appeared on the threshold, I thought. The same grandfather. She immediately greeted and said that she was Asya Konyak, and that Kiltz had sent her here, and then her grandfather interrupted her by asking her name. The grandfather began muttering that Kiltz was doing something. Why did he send the child to him? Meanwhile, he was walking into the middle of the house. The children remained at the threshold. Seeing that they did not come in, he called out to them to come in and not feed the forest beetles, and then offered a cup of warm milk. Grabbing the cup, she began stuttering to tell what had happened. But her grandfather interrupted her and said that Kiltz had sent her so that she would not see the violence. He added that she should not worry. He is stronger than those two, much stronger. Those brawlers are like small children for him. And then Asha suspiciously asked her grandfather if he was the teacher of Kiltz. Grandfather laughed and turned everything into humor, said that he was too old for teaching. He said that it was late and it was time to sleep. They decided that Asha would sleep in Prem's room. That was the name of the boy who brought her. The only clean room. Prem led her up the stairs to the room, and the girl looked at her grandfather and thought that Kiltz was very similar to this old man. The room was spacious with a large bed. So after changing her clothes and washing her face of blood, Asha settled down more comfortably. Prem lay next to her. Quiet night. Turning from side to side, she tried to fall asleep, but she couldn't. Thoughts filled the head so tightly that there was a hum in the head. Getting up, she opened the window to let in air, held the broken doll and thought about the rings. I missed him, looked into the distance, but he was not there. The morning came. It was difficult to get up. All previous events left their mark and fatigue accumulated, and sleepless nights were added to them. Prem was gone. The doll was lying nearby. It's sad that it broke. Asha hugged the doll, then got up, got dressed and went downstairs to the living room.
Going down the stairs, she saw Prem, who was consulting in the kitchen, and grandfather, who was already sitting at the table. Prem called to join the breakfast. It looked delicious.
Asha had never seen newspapers and wondered why the book was so big. Prem explained that this is a newspaper. It publishes news from all over the world. When grandfather heard that she was unfamiliar with such common words and concepts, he wondered how she grew up in general. I offered her to read. Taking the newspaper in her hands, she looked at the symbols, turned the pages, and remained silent. Grandfather realized that she could not read. She felt ashamed. The old man hastened to calm her down, said that he would teach her very quickly and she would read faster than anyone else. Asha smiled. She had long wanted to learn to read. The house was surrounded by a forest. The sun's rays broke through the dense canopy and the chirping of birds spread around like music. After breakfast, I felt like taking a walk through this wonderful landscape, and I even saw myself in this thick forest when I found out that Prem had gone somewhere. Still, she asked her grandfather to go for a walk. He allowed, only that she didn't go far. Asha happily went to explore the area. A small path led to the winter garden. Looking inside, I saw incredible flowers and various strange plants. Such beauty. Suddenly, she saw a silhouette behind the glass. When he turned around, it turned out to be Prem. He was watering the plants. Asha entered through the door opened by Prem. Stepping slowly, she scattered the plants she had seen for the first time. He talked about daisies and cactus and others. Since the homeland of the cactus is incredibly far away, it was grown with the help of magic, and those flowers that grew not so far away were brought by train. Asha dreamily said that everything is possible with magic. And I plunged into the journey in my thoughts, and then I thought about kilts and felt sad. And still not. Even though her grandfather told her not to worry, she couldn't do it. A lot of time had passed and he still hadn't appeared, even though he said he would follow. Prem asked why she was so worried. She said that he was wounded during the last fight. The boy thoughtfully said that all this was created by the ring. Looking at everything that was created inside the garden, plants from all corners of the world, he said that Kiltz is a great magician. It seemed to Asa that she was being reassured. An incredibly bright, spacious gazebo of white marble, to which a balustrade led past the stairs, was wrapped in lilac flowers. This is also the work of the ring. They sat down at the table, which seemed to be glowing. The boy asked about the doll, and the girl said that Kiltz gave it to her, but it broke. Prem asked for the doll, turning it in his hands, and said that everything is fine with the spell. The mana needed for it to work has run out, and there is a lot of mana here. The girl turned her head and didn't see anything. Prem said with a smile on her lips that you can't see her, you can only feel her. Asha closed her eyes and tried to feel, but nothing happened. Then the boy took her hand and told her to try to feel through him. At first, she didn't feel anything. Suddenly, a current seemed to pass through her hand, but it was not painful but tickling. But Asha still recoiled. I wonder if she will be able to repair the doll now just by sewing mana into it. What a strange and interesting feeling she had never felt before. Asha closed her eyes and took the doll in her hands, and Prem decided to help her. Mana flowed into the doll like a spring stream. The girl did not understand what was happening. It was her first sorcery, if you can call it sorcery, but the moment was unique. When she opened her eyes, the doll was working. She rushed headlong to her grandfather to share her impressions and brag that she was able to fix the doll. Grandfather did not immediately understand what was being said, but Prem explained that Asha poured mana into the doll and it worked. Carefully asking if Kiltz had taught her this, she received the answer that Prem helped her, and without him, she would not have succeeded in anything. Grandfather was silent. While the girl was fighting with herself that she had done something wrong again, the grandfather thought about this interesting event, and then he smiled and said that there were not many children with such talent, and praised her for her work with mana. The girl immediately felt relieved, so she did it right. Still smiling, he told her to ask the ring to teach her magic. Asha replied that she asked him but was refused. Then the old man said that Kiltz was the court wizard of Caldrogan and had many students, that it was very hard work to teach others. The girl wondered if the ring would praise her if he knew she had succeeded. That's how the week passed. Every morning, Asha looked into the window from which the path was visible, waited to see Kiltz, missed him and worried. And so the door opened and the much-desired figure appeared on the threshold. The girl screamed so loudly that the grandfather was scared. She jumped up and ran as fast as she could to the ring. She grabbed him so tightly that she almost knocked him off his feet. The young man was also glad to see her. Asked if she was all right, she hummed and touching him from all sides asked if he was all right. Grandfather approached Kiltz and sternly asked how he did it after finding a girl who looked exactly like her. The question sounded threatening. Count Kaizu said the same. But who does she look like? Asha asked herself. Kiltz told Grandfather Kazkan that it was not time yet, took the girl in his arms and carried her home. Grandfather followed. Thoughts filled the little head again. Why didn't he say who she looked like? And she still has a lot of questions, but I guess we have to wait. The smell of fried bacon and scrambled eggs was already wafting through the living room. This smell tickled my stomach. I wanted to eat it so much, but everyone was waiting. The grandfather invited him to the table. The young man gladly agreed. The smells were such that it was not worth refusing. The girl couldn't wait to brag and told the ring that she poured mana into the doll and now it works again. But I did not expect such a reaction. The young man asked her never to do this again. If necessary, he would repair it himself or buy her anything she wanted. And not to use magic. A strange feeling hung over the living room. Everyone was silent, each about his own. Someone agreed that it would be better. Someone did not. But everyone was thinking in silence. After breakfast, the girl ran into the room, fell on the bed and cried quietly. She believed that he would praise her like a grandfather, but he forbade witchcraft. Prem found her like that in her thoughts. Even he uses magic. He tried to calm the girl down. He said not to be sad, it's just that Kiltz is scared. Asya wanted to return to the living room, but heard the conversation. The young man said that he had made his opponent suffer from pain and that he would not die quickly. A few more words about Kaisa, and then asked how Asya learned to control mana. Grandfather replied that he did not know that she wanted to fix the doll. And then he turned to Kiltz and sternly asked if he didn't teach her and where the hell did he find this girl? So similar to her. Asya listened to how Kiltz wanted to protect her from the outside world, and that he would give her everything she needed, but that she would not touch magic. She lived in hell. Grandfather did not agree with his decision, because she probably wouldn't want to live her whole life here in the mountains, and yet Kazkan insisted on telling where he found her and Kiltz told. Then the grandfather said that she is very smart and he should teach her. The talks went on for a long time. The old man asked how the girl should grow up, whether he would adopt her, but Kiltz dismissed this question. Kazkan continued about the fact that she will grow up, meet someone, and it will not be just friendship. What will Kiltz say then? Will he let her go? Or maybe he will raise her as a lover? Grandfather asked such questions that irritated the young man. He grabbed the grandfather by the chest and sternly told him that he should observe the limits of where to joke, and where humor is inappropriate. Grandfather's legs came off the floor. Asya screamed. She was heard. Kiltz asked how long she had been standing there. The girl said that she did not want to eavesdrop. Kiltz asked Asya to sit down and asked what she had heard. She said that starting with the story of the murder. While the young man was thinking how to talk to the girl so as not to upset her, she started a conversation about learning magic. Words of entreaty cannot be conveyed. She promised to work and when she grows up to pay, and that she will study very diligently and learn everything. Kiltz finally surrendered, agreed to teach her. I woke up very early. No matter how hard I tried, I didn't fall asleep. Thoughts about learning magic chased away sleep. She decided to go down to the living room. Kiltz noticed that she got up quite early. The smell coming from his cup was unfamiliar and attractive. The young man said that coffee is a bitter drink, but it was difficult not to try. And grasping the cup with both hands, she sipped a large mouthful. The hot, bitter drink spread throughout the oral cavity. Silently, she handed over the cup, thinking that she would never taste it again, and asked to start studying. Kiltz noticed that the sun had not risen yet. It was early. He asked me to sit down and wait. While I was waiting, memories came flooding back. Father said that there is no money for drinking, so he will not spend it on school. For so long I waited for the day when I could study. I dreamed that it would come someday, and here it is. Finally. There are only a few minutes left. While the girl was sitting quietly, so as not to frighten the dream, Kiltz finished his morning coffee in silence, looked at how she was quietly sitting, and asked to follow him. The first rays of the sun were visible from behind the lush crowns of the trees, breaking through the curly leaves to reach the small flowers growing in the shade. In the same way, in silence, she jogged after her teacher, settled down in the middle of the lawn, sat on a chair, and looked with such devoted and happy eyes. The ring was very impressed. No treasure in the world could buy that happy smile on her face. And he started. I asked if she knows why winter is coming. The question surprised her. What's the point of magic? But she answered that it gets cold in winter. Asked if he knows why plants grow. She proudly answered that there are nutrients in the ground. And why are they in the ground? She couldn't answer and started to get nervous. She wanted to study magic, not what's in the ground. The ring stopped her speech and told her to look carefully. Put her hand to the ground, and a glow appeared under her hand. The glow grew bigger and bigger, reflected in the girl's wide-open eyes. Slowly raising her hand from the ground, the glow spread, and the girl saw that a flower, which was not there just now, was reaching for her palm. But she didn't understand how it was possible and how to do it. And when asked if she remembered it, she answered that she did not know how. The ring explained that he sent part of his mana into the ground on a seed that was lying there, and it sprouted. Mana as a substance in the earth gave the opportunity to sprout. Asya asked whether mana gives birth to life. The teacher explained that she is around us and in everything. Magic in the change of seasons, in the ripening of crops, in the singing of birds, it always surrounds us. In every breath of the wind. Also magic. All the phenomena that surround us during the day and at night are all created by the flow of mana. It is the basis of magical power, the dragon's last breath on earth. It would be difficult to find another student who could listen so quietly and absorb every word. A mage is one who feels the flow of mana. The most important thing now is to learn about magic, and later he will teach you how to use it and be there to guide you. The ring asked for a promise, never to harm anyone with magic and to use it in extremely important cases. Of course, the girl agreed. She remembered that the teacher never used magic just like that. And the third promise, never try to resurrect the dead. And then I agreed, and Kiltz Iscardion, the descendant of the Grey Traveler, swore that Asha Konyak would be his student until the bones of the moon peek out from under the sea of stars. He asked for her hand in marriage and recited a spell that would allow her to possess mana, which must be renewed daily. Asya was beside herself with happiness. The first lesson. The ring said that he has a stone with mana. It is for a flashlight, and when it is there, the flashlight lights up. And he looks like an ordinary one. When it is touched by magic, it starts to glow. And the ring showed what kind of glow this stone can emit. And inside the lantern, it is charged with magic and then does not go out, so that it is not there. The ring explained everything in great detail, then suggested that Asa try to make the stone light up. She imagined herself a lantern. She concentrated, tried to remember the feeling when she handled the doll, imagined that it glowed, how much light it emitted. Asya was concentrating very hard, but after an hour and several, it didn't light up. Then Kiltz asked where she got it. She answered, in the winter garden. And they went to the garden. Every mage has his own special place. Maybe this is Asya's place. When they crossed the threshold of the garden, the teacher suggested that she try again, choose a comfortable place and concentrate. She stood and remembered that the doll was the first thing that she liked, and the feeling did not remember how it happened, and so she went through all the moments in her memory. The doll, something that she really wanted to be repaired, and felt a tingling sensation in her palms. Then, as if something was flowing, like a current, she opened her eyes and saw how the stone began to glow. The glow was not dazzling, but it was. She ran up to Kiltz. He looked at the stone and said that for the first time it was a great attempt. He added that the stone could shine brighter and raised his palm to the girl's small palm. The stone shone like the sun. And Kiltz said that this is really the place of confluence of her energy. It will be the best place for her to do magic. Every magician has such a place or attribute. Prem brought tea and they invited him to join the tea party. He gladly accepted. Asha breathed a sigh of relief and shared the news with the boy. That Kiltz had praised her and that she had learned magic. And now she drinks tea and feels like a princess. The girl asked the teacher if he likes flowers. He broke such an incredibly beautiful garden. But he replied that it was a whim, not a desire, and shut up. Asha whispered if she could ask him, and when she got permission, asked if she looked like someone he knew. The ring quietly answered that it was similar. That this is his old acquaintance, and at first he even thought that Asha was her. But she died. Asha stopped asking. There was silence. The girl understood that this is why he called her Rose when he first saw her, and that he was not looking for her. The meeting was accidental. That's why everyone is surprised. Kiltz asked what all the questions were about, and the girl burst into tears. Not understanding what was happening, he ran up. He began to apologize. He did not want to tell her this. The young man did not want to talk about it with anyone. Her death made him rude, especially he did not want to talk about her with Asha. Asha reassured him that everything was fine with her. And a thought crept into her. Would he have taken her if she was not similar to the one he knew? The next morning started normally. Breakfast was already on the table. The girl was having breakfast, but yesterday's thoughts kept spinning in her little head. Kiltz suspected that her behavior had changed, but Asha pretended to be worried about today's lesson. Glad to study. The teacher promised that he would teach her something new, told her to come to class at noon. She was happy with such news. She was very interested in what exactly she would study, even in the new study room. I also wanted to inform you that I learned to write. The new office is the ring room. Asha imagined that there was perfect cleanliness and everything was shining, that it was spacious and very bright. She knocked, asked if she could enter. But when she opened the door, she saw that her ideas were far from the truth. Everything around was filled with books. Thousands of books. The biggest library. The ring invited her to pass. Asha noted that the room was very dirty and she could have cleaned it, but she was refused because everything was in its place. The teacher rummaged through everything on the table for a few more minutes to find his favorite pen with the flag, but again refused the girl's services in cleaning. Not finding the pen, I asked about yesterday's spell. She showed her palm and said that it had almost disappeared. Sitting down on a large chair, they talked about yesterday's lesson, and the girl shared the feeling that she was behind a wall of magic. But the teacher reassured her. This is how it should be. The spell creates a channel between the sorcerer and the mana in the atmosphere, and that the best sorcerer cannot do without the spell. Today's lesson was dedicated to northern magic, and the teacher prepared a spell. Asha learned to write and read, but did not understand these texts. When she said she couldn't read it, Kilt smiled and said it was an ancient language, a letter from an elephant tower. But all spells were one time, and for it to work, you need to remember it and write it down by heart every time. This will be homework. Asya was amazed that it was necessary to write so much, and asked when she would be able to use magic to not write. Kiltz replied that one should always write, but she hadn't seen the teacher write a spell to use magic. He said that this is an exception, but all magicians use and write them. Of course, it was strange and learning seemed different, but since it was necessary, I tried. All the letters were filled out, and Aisha, pleased with herself, showed them. The young man was secretly proud of her, praised her for her diligence, and made remarks about calligraphy. Asya promised to try. Kiltz was folding books, and she saw some kind of device. The teacher said that this is a magical device that helps to see distant objects. Of course, she wanted to try and even see the stars if possible. And he showed her the North Star Asita. It was impossible to believe because the stars are so far away that it is impossible to see them. But with this magical device, it turns out, you can. Star Asita. The fact that Asha did not see her so clearly meant that she still has little ability to cast spells, and when she becomes a real magician, the brightness of the star will be greater. The girl wondered when her magical power would increase. Would she be able to see better? And the teacher showed her the Altan star. The people of the north and the south see this star in different ways. In the north it appears for a short time, and the people of the south think that they have two suns. In the north and in the south, people see different skies, and the time in the south is calculated differently, because at night Altan shines with a misty haze, as if it is always day. What interesting knowledge she received. She liked to learn something new so much and wanted to see this phenomenon when there was light both day and night. Here Kilt stopped her flight of thoughts, said that it was better for her not to know the outside world. He is scary and dangerous. Asha looked at the teacher with eyes filled with 1,000 questions and objections. She wanted to learn about the world around her, because she only knew her home and meadows. I didn't want to believe that all continents, huge oceans, and ivory tower, such a boundless world and such a tiny one, would not meet. She wanted to know more and more, and I wanted to go there, to a huge unexplored world, to learn its secrets and see the star Altan. After a little silence, the teacher said that there is a much bigger car in the ivory tower, and the visibility is better there. Thousands of whys forced the young man to prepare many answers. The tower was built for observation, and now it is a mage tower. Observations were needed then and are needed now, because they still haven't found Ingram. Writers say this is a person with an unshakable spirit. Lyricists compare it with the desire to know the taboo, what is forbidden, what is unattainable. Therefore, people are drawn to gather in different places and observe. They watch, looking at the sea, over which a golden bird flew in ancient times. And everyone hopes to get here one day. Asha listened very carefully. Suddenly the door opened and Prem called her to sleep. After wishing the teacher a good quiet night, she went after the boy who was leading her by the hand as if she might get lost. The ring dreamily stood in the starlight and drifted off into the distance with his thoughts. It seemed to the girl that he was missing the missing Ingram. Inspired by today's lesson, she wanted to read more, but Prem was tired and wanted to sleep. But Asha begged for a little time to read. He agreed. Opening the book, word after word poured out of her mouth. A story about a sleeping dragon who lived in ancient times. When he woke up, he saw a bird with golden plumage. Its radiance spread across the plain to the very horizon. Prem understood. If he does not pick up the book, she will read all night. So he forced her into bed, covered her with a warm blanket. It seemed that there was no night at all, only she closed her eyelids as the bright rays of the sun tickled her face. Very slowly, Asha crawled out of bed. The day is ahead. Today's lesson was difficult. The teacher was adamant, criticized everything she did, and said that everything was wrong, speaking each word with a print, so that she understood that she wrote unclearly, and she excused herself with a lack of time. Usually the ring is kind, and Asha thought that today he looked like an evil demon. And he repeated again that he asked to analyze and classify 12 stones, while the listener tried to correct the mistakes, handed in the reworked task. After carefully rereading it, he said that everything is correct, but it should be reworked because this approach is ineffective. Gives her 2 hours to fix it. She tried to deny that she would not have time to learn the theory of magic and the 5 great elements, but it was in vain. 2 hours for this part of the task. The girl thought about the magic drink that Prem was preparing and asked, where did he learn magic? Kilt said he was not a magician, but he helped fix the doll in the garden, pouring the healing drink. The teacher said that since he is a doll, it is natural for him to have a connection with the same doll. Prem used himself as a machine to help, but you cast the spell yourself. The little girl's world turned upside down. She could not think that Prem is a doll. She did not expect such a miracle. The girl was interested in whether it could break. Kilt said his mana core could break if that happened. Not even he could fix it. Time passed and the task remained in place, and the teacher turned the thoughts of the little lady back to her studies. She puffed out her cheeks and fell silent. It looked so funny that Kilt couldn't help but laugh when he was funny. Asha felt happy, so she laughed too. Today is the day to give flowers to the teacher, and Asha wove a wreath for Kilt's. Although he resisted, he eventually obeyed. Grandfather began to make fun of the ring. But not for long, because it turned out that wreaths were also prepared for him and Prem. There was real laughter at breakfast. Asha was happy that she now has so many friends, and then the girl asked if she could go to school, where she would have even more friends. Grandfather looked at the ring, but he turned away. His opinion about the big world for the girl did not change, but the grandfather said that then he would tell her about how he was a teacher as a young man. Koskin talked about old times, said that the young man was so frail that he thought that if he was wounded, he would bleed. He told stories in his own manner. It was not without mockery. Everyone listened and smiled. The girl asked how they met. It was only necessary to ask this question, do not stop. Koskan is not of noble blood, but he was entrusted with the title of mage, and he worked as a courtier in the Caldrons family. But this is a very long story. Asha, like all girls, was very interested and asked to tell the story anyway. As befits a grandfather, he scratched the back of his head, rubbed his forehead, and began. He spoke about the times that were 50 years ago, when magic was rarely known to anyone. But once a man found a castle in Egeron on the slope of the northern mountains. It was a taboo, a place where royal families found shelter. Asha asked, do dragons really protect the sacred part of the big castle? Grandfather replied that there were such rumors. But surely he knows that those who broke into the castle took away the greatest treasure from it, the fragment of Egeron. This shard made it possible for an ordinary person to sense mana, and he was transported to the center where all the surrounding cities united and formed Aster. Koskan continued to tell the story, and the girl listened with her mouth open, so captivated by her story. Aster formed the largest country on the mainland and raised taxes to this day, which is why the grandfather quarreled with Kaldrogan. As if the mighty kings of Aster became even more arrogant thanks to this power. Kiltz listened without interrupting, and when Koskan paused, he quietly said that it was theft and the use of power that was not given from birth. Asha was still small, and it seemed to her that the world would be better if there was more magic, if everyone could cast spells. She reminded Klitza of her. He wanted to be alone, and he got up from the table, thanking him for breakfast, and told Asha to finish her meal. She needs a lot of strength. Came out. After breakfast, Asha ran to the teacher's room. The young man was sitting in his chair and reading a book, hugging him. She sat on his lap. She began to look at what she was reading. The book about the dragon and the golden bird is her favorite book. And Prem didn't let her finish reading, so she has a chance now. When the dragon decided to follow the bird from the other side of the world, he lost his strength and was on the verge of death, and then he saw the bird Ingram. Then he watched the golden bird over the sea. The ring noticed that she was already reading without mistakes. She was pleased to hear that. In general, she was pleased to spend time with her teacher. Although he seemed strict, but behind this strictness, there was boundless kindness. She felt it. He silently looked at her smiling face, and when Asha asked what he was thinking about, he answered that he was thinking about tomorrow's task. But today, you have to rest. The girl almost reached the room when she thought that she had not taken a book with her to read before going to sleep, and turned back. Taking the book, she did not see Kiltz. She wondered where he was, and she went to the open door from which the light of the lantern could be seen. She tiptoed up and looked through the crack. Kiltz was on his knees with his face buried in his hands and crying. The girl's heart sank. She remembered the first time she found him in the forest. How much she wanted to go up and wipe his tears, but he wouldn't let her. As soon as the first rays peeked through the windows, Asha was already on her feet. I had to clean up and put everything in its place. The teacher was not in the room. Looking around, she decided that it wouldn't hurt to tidy things up a little here as well. While she was laying out the cards and books that she had brought, she found a wreath that she had given 6 months ago. Joy filled her heart. Saved. And then I found one more thing. This is what she would never have thought she could find here. It was the bouquet she was picking when they met for the first time. I thought about it. Why did he pick those flowers? Because, frightened, she waved and the marigolds flew in different directions. And he collected and kept. After cleaning, Asha and Prem were sitting on the porch finishing some of yesterday's pie. They felt carefree and devoured piece by piece with pleasure. When the last one remained, I asked why someone can pick up the lost and not tell about it? Keep this thing and not return it? Prem thought for a while and said that must be because this thing is very important to him. So they sat on the porch until the teacher arrived. Entering through the gate, he was carrying a scroll. The girl ran to meet him, already missed the teacher, was waiting for a new lesson. Her surprises did not end today. It turned out that the roll is for her. Kiltz said he brought a present. Of course, the girl was surprised, sat down by an old tree and began to open the package. I found a letter, unfolded, written by Kiltz. It was said that she was a brilliant student and about the hope that the path of adventure would be a journey for her. Signed by Ring Asgardion. It was time to unwrap the gift. The teacher said, "To the anniversary that she lives here." She was overflowing with feelings. It was interesting to see what was inside. It was a mantle. In Castle Ivory, there is a custom of receiving a mantle woven of magic. But he will receive a real mantle at the end of his studies. The best gift she could get. Almost a real magician. But of course, she will still study and study. While she was comforting herself, she noticed a shiny bow. Kiltz explained that it was also for her since her hair had grown back and Asha no longer looked like a boy. The girl asked the teacher to tie her hair. He was a little embarrassed but agreed. It turned out that even the teacher does not do everything perfectly, because he did it for the first time. They both laughed, but not bad for the first time. 6 years have passed since then. The morning was sunny as usual. The birds from the forest were chirping. It seemed that they had a morning roll call. The door opened and a ringing voice filled the living room. Asha called her grandfather. She brought groceries with Prem. Asha was already 17. She grew up and was a slender, tall girl. Only Prem remained the same boy she had met once. Haskan could see other people's memories and noticed that someone was following them. But the young lady reassured him that everything was fine. She brought him goodies. Asha hinted to her grandfather that this is a secret and Kiltz should not know about it. Otherwise, he will forbid her to go out. Surprisingly, the teacher heard this and asked what the secret was. Laughing, she said that it was a joke and started unpacking the bags with the products that she had bought. And then the gate opened. A young man was standing with a suitcase in his hands and said something about how long he had been looking for this place. All four froze. For so many years, not a single living soul except for the residents of the house was here, and this place is impossible to find. The young lady was more surprised than anyone. Firstly, how did the stranger end up here? And secondly, this is the first stranger she has seen here. Kiltz recognized the stranger and called him Juris. Juris was incredibly happy that he was recognized and met with Kiltz, calling him a teacher. He also said that he had been walking around for a long time, but the dragon spine spell hiding the house prevented him from getting here. When the unexpected guest approached, Kiltz said that he was not his teacher, and asked how he got here. He was supposed to be an Aster. Juris said that, in short, he felt the flow of familiar mana, and then he followed this lady and pointed to Asya. The teacher looked at the girl, then at Juris, and said that he understood everything and he could stay. But the guest unexpectedly asked if he would even inquire why he followed the lady. Kiltz replied that the answer to any of his requests would be no. Juris understood that he had to leave, but out of courtesy, Kazkan invited him to refresh himself before the road. He thoughtfully agreed. When Juris talked with Kazkan, the girl thought that they knew each other. Grandfather said that his hideous face had not changed at all. He replied that Aragon's relics were of great benefit. It was a slave contract for the position of Professor Yefranger. Asya listened to their argument. Here she remembered how many years ago, when they were traveling here, a little boy told her that he would join the Efrangir and become a magician. Here she interrupted their conversation with a question, "Is the young man Professor Yefrangira?" To which she received an affirmative answer. He came back and recommended himself. The head of magical biology in Efrangir, Professor Martin Juris. The professor stayed for lunch. The table was covered with many different dishes as if they had been waiting for guests for a long time. Questions poured out of the girl's mouth non-stop. Juris barely had time to answer that he was Ring's assistant when he was Kaldrogan's court mage. When Asha asked how long ago it was, he answered that he was 21 years old. Her thoughts were confused because now he looks like a young man. How old is he now? He said that at that time he was a stone egg of mana, as they called young magicians. When the girl asked how old Kiltz was, Juris replied that neither he nor Kiltz looked their age and laughed. The questions continued. Now she was interested in whether it was true that the 5 great elements are not recognized in Yefrangir. The professor said that the 5th would be sooner. I asked how this is possible because the 5th element is the sorcerer himself? She seemed to question everything. Obviously, the girl was more mature than the students at school. The professor asked if she knew about the artifacts found 50 years ago. This is a huge magical resource. Magic in Aster works with the help of wands and banners with these artifacts. That is, these wands are the spellcasters. He continued that there are few sorcerers with the innate gift of magic. So it is a real blessing for the Asterians that anyone can wield magic. Even as a child, Asha thought that magic was wonderful for everyone, and now she was interested in everything that Juris told. Grandfather remarked that they got along. And then the professor said that Kiltz is the last legend of the Ivory Tower, the descendant of the Grey Pilgrim and the best magician. All the mages of Aster together are not worth the magic of the ring, but everyone knows that it is difficult to learn from him. His lessons are not easy to understand, and asked Asya. Perhaps it is difficult for her to understand the teachings. The girl denied, said that it was difficult to understand only from the beginning of studies. Now there is no reason to suffer from studies. The professor laughed and said that it was not fair. When Kiltz taught him, he was not so reserved. The teacher said that he can repeat the lesson now. Humor covered real emotions. And continuing to smile, Juris said that he was joking and hurried with his desire. Had already had a serious conversation. He said that Aster is looking for highly qualified magicians regardless of origin and status. The teacher said he knew about it. Then he turned to Asa and said that he could offer her a place at the wizarding school and give her a recommendation, since she was a student of the ring. Asha was excited about this opportunity. Of course, she would like to attend school with her peers, get to know and make friends. But the teacher said that it would not happen, and his voice sounded so sharply and confidently that everyone understood. There is no need to question. No. Asha could not accept the refusal and followed him. She quietly said that she wanted to go to school. Kiltz replied that they teach to serve the nobles. She didn't give up. She said she wanted to learn Aster magic. He again denied that these are children's games. The real magic is here. He will teach everything. Then Kiltz came back and said that if she wants to leave, she should give the real reason. Asha answered that reading about the world and seeing it are not the same thing. The words that the world is cruel and disappointment awaits her there did not comfort her in any way. She said that even if she was hurt, it would not affect him. Exactly what Kazkan once warned about happened. The girl grew up, and she couldn't understand why he still looked at her like a little girl. The teacher was alone in the room. I didn't want interlocutors now. I was thinking about what happened and how to help it, and where did that Juris come up with the proposal. Kazkan entered the room quietly without knocking. It was a moment when there was no need to knock. He said that the time had come and he should let her go. Grandfather persuaded him, refuted all refusals because sooner or later she would find out about everything anyway. She cannot grow in ignorance. Every time we are in the city, she stares at the school. And then Kiltz said that if he let her go, he would never see her again. This was the real reason for his steadfastness. Kazkan said he should go with her. Here, of course, it is better than with an alcoholic father, but this room with books is not the whole world. The ring confirmed his decision and said that he did not want her to know the dark side of the world and pain. Will not make this mistake again. Kazkan listened and said he was crazy. Asha is not a tame animal that can be entertained with treats. She is a person and nice toys will not help. The rings were enraged by the grandfather's objections. He shouted that this was his last word and that he would not change his mind. Grandfather Koskin listened to everything Kilt said without any emotion. Then, when there was silence, he said that Juris called him the 16th. Sit down quietly. Despite all the feverishness of the previous conversation, he slowly said that he was already very old, but he remembered his debt. Time to pay back the debt. The ring listened in silence. Ghazkhan talked about the fact that he is already a living corpse which is about to break down, and a girl should not live among such a mob as them. I offered to send the girl to school. This will be a debt payment. A child should not lose his life here. Life is the most valuable gift. In complete silence, grandfather left, and only the creaking of the old door betrayed his absence. The ring was left alone with his thoughts. The next morning, conversations were heard on the porch. Yuris said goodbye to the girl, but not for long. Her eyes shone with happiness. She promised to meet in a week. The professor said that he had left a seal for the letter of recommendation, and that he would be waiting for it at Yefrangiri. After seeing off an unexpected guest who turned her life upside down, she went to pack. The teacher watched her joyful behavior. Asha was still angry but said hello. When she waved at him, he turned sharply and went deep into the room without answering a word. This upset the girl. Asha went up to his room, but the door opened and he was standing in the doorway. His look was like this, full of despair and disappointment, and pity, and anger. Looking into his eyes, she got angry and turned away. She also has the right to be angry, and silently went to her room. A week passed. The last things were packed and Asha said goodbye to Prem. She regretted that she could not take him with her, very tight in her arms. The last words of farewell and instructions for the future independent life were heard in the yard. There was no ring. Grandfather wanted to do without sentiments. He did not succeed. The girl hugged him very tightly. He reminded her not to let herself be humiliated and to study. When she turned her head and saw the ring, he was holding a box for her. This is a magic box for sending letters. All letters are checked in Yefrangir, but if she wants to write to him, she can put a postcard in the box and he will receive it. He told her not to worry. He made a spell that no one would guess what it really was, and he made the box himself. The teacher took her out and asked if she remembered that he once said that he was against her getting to know the outside world. Aja did not answer. He said that even now he does not want to let go, and if it depended only on him, he would lock him up and not let him go. The girl was both scared and sad to hear this, reminded him how he had promised to give her everything she wanted, added that she wanted to go to school, make friends, and learn about the world. The teacher interrupted her, saying that she would soon realize that things were not as she imagined them to be. And then she remembered the postcard he had written to her, about a world full of mysteries and a world of adventures. She said that she wanted to get to know them and asked to let her go. She always had the last word. He smiled. You can't take that away from her. I will let you go on one condition. You will not mention me at the academy. Asya understood that he wanted to keep his secret and agreed to the condition. She promised that she would return after the end of the semester and that she would write a lot, and the teacher said that he would wait for her letters. She went. Yuris was waiting for her on the coach. He became her guide. Everything that opened to the eye was incredible and amazing for Asha. The professor said that not all roads for trains are laid, that they currently cover only half of the country and construction will be completed soon. Everything around is new and unfamiliar, and the girl absorbed every word. Trains are the transportation of goods, and this is the basis of the prosperity of the country. In Astera, girls are called Filian, but Asha would be Filian Konyak, and men Furman, so an acquaintance called him Furman. But the professor said that he was already too old for such an address, so Asha can call him Professor Juris. Here Juris changed the subject and asked if she knew that she looked like someone Kiltz knew. Asha laughed and replied that she had heard about the similarities. The professor said he followed her because she reminded him of that girl, and he says this because the ring is not around. Juris imagined the person Asha looked like and was convinced once again, the same face, body as if it were her. The girl asked if the professor also knew Kiltz's acquaintance. Surprised by the term acquaintance, they were more than just acquaintances. He decided not to tell. Asha asked if that girl worked at the yard, because Kiltz worked there when they were close. She didn't get an answer. Instead, the professor suggested that she rest because the road was going to be far, but she decided to devote time to the book. Juris said that after learning about magic, this book and she read about Ingram and the dragon opens up in a new world, because it is a real story of magicians. He said that in the north, mages are still called descendants of dragon blood. This story is also connected with the foundation of Caldrogen. Told a legend, 1,000 years ago, even before the foundation of the mainland kingdoms, the first mage appeared. It was the Grey Pilgrim of the Ivory Tower. But ancient people did not understand magic and were afraid of it. Instead of honoring it and considered the pilgrim an outcast, he wandered around the world without shelter. Avoided people. Once he met the ancestor of the Caldrogen royal family. Over time, they became friends and concluded a contract. The mage helped found the kingdom of Caldrogen, and the first of the family was called Ingram, like a bird. Ingram took possession of the north with the help of magic. And then for help, he gave the pilgrim passage to the Star Sea in payment for the contract. This is exactly what is written at the end of the book. And this is what all magicians are forced to miss. Everyone is trying to find him. Flight Place Ingram, the end of the Eastern Sea. Asha thought that she would find out the answer to what was in that passage, but no one knew about it. The legend was silent about it. The magician went to the Star Sea, and the king missed him so much that he built an observatory on Cape Yaka, which became an ivory tower. Asha remembered that Kiltz had once told her about Ingram, but she forgot what, closed her eyes and dreamed of a golden bird. When the clatter of the wheels subsided and the train stopped, she looked out the window. I was surprised, that's an understatement. I was delighted. I didn't even imagine that Efranzir was like that. The professor continued to introduce, told that it was once the monastery of Caldrogen. The dimensions are impressive and only half is reserved for learning. Asha saw the students in the same clothes, and the professor said that she would also need such a uniform, and for now invited her to the office. Seeing Eurus's office, she was impressed by its cleanliness, because it is impossible to find even a pen in Kiltz's room. And here everything is perfect. When she told the professor about it, he was incredibly surprised. Because Kiltz is obsessed with cleanliness, has he become softer over the years? Asha went to settle in a dormitory. Mrs. Ruth was supposed to help her. She went out into the huge courtyard and thought that she was finally a student of Yefrenhir. A new stage. Mrs. Ruth meticulously looked over the papers that Eurus submitted for placement in the dormitory, and said that not all the papers are here. A certificate about the guardian is needed. She asked who the guardian was, and only the girl said that it was Juris, who immediately denied that he was on vacation. And if he is a guardian, where is the certificate confirming this guardianship? Asha was confused. She had not heard of any certificate, and this was all that Martin Juris gave her. The girl was confused. She did not know what to do. Ruth questioned all her papers and demanded a document confirming her representation. Her thoughts were interrupted by a boy who opened the door and apologized for interrupting the conversation. His red hair looked familiar. He continued to approach Ruth. I asked how things were going, and Ruth said that the student did not provide information about the representation, looked over all the documents and hinted that everything was correct there. But the director did not agree and said that she will not provide her registration until she brings the certificate. The boy understood that there was no point in arguing and whispered to Mrs. Ruth to be gentler, and he would bring the book she had wanted for a long time. He took Asha by the hand and led her out of the office. On the way, he said that Mrs. Ruth would do everything so that she would not be disturbed, and invited her to take a walk. The girl thanked for the help, and he said that it was strange at all. It was the first time he heard about the guardian's certificate. This is probably what it is, to be an old lady. The red-haired stranger asked if she remembered him. Asha thought she saw him, but she couldn't remember where and when. Then she remembered this face. He was hiding behind his mother's skirt and then jumped out and announced that he would become a magician. So that's why he seemed familiar. And she cried out that she had seen him on Lake Arenden in the Mountain Pearl. And the guy said that he recognized her right away, only now she has more hair. He said that even in his dreams, he could not have dreamed that they would meet and introduced himself. His name was Lichinio. Asha was surprised that he remembered her. It was so long ago. And he said that they often remember that day, especially Mother. Remember that event. That mage was incredibly impressed with her whole deed. Lichinio asked if he was still alive, and the girl answered that the teacher was alive and well. She did not call his name. The guy said that special admissions are very rare, and she is the first one who received such an admission for the graduating class. It's Professor Juris and her teacher who know each other, and he wrote a letter of recommendation which surprised the boy even more. Martin Juris was amazing. The girl decided to keep her mouth shut and said that she knew that they were old acquaintances, and that was all she knew. Licinio paused, then asked, "If she is by recommendation, does that mean she is a commoner?" The girl, enduring a pause, answered, "Yes." I remembered all the statements of Kilt's about aristocrats as they relate to ordinary people, and his warning on this matter. But Licinio laughed and said that he is a noble only because his grandfather got the title several decades ago, so they are almost equal. Asha breathed a sigh of relief. Perhaps she had a friend here, but she still could not trust him. Licinio offered to introduce her to his friend. He must be in the dormitory. She gladly agreed to new acquaintances. But suddenly Licinio shouted that Mr. Dominon was coming and for her to hide under the bed. She jumped up and then realized what had happened and that it was not right. While she was hiding there, Mr. Dominon scolded the boy for the mess in the room. Licinio Kaizu addressed him and he promised to clean everything immediately. Asha was still under Kaizu's bed, such a familiar name. Licinio Kaizu, where could she have heard it? Thoughts were interrupted by a too loud conversation. Mr. Dominon was telling Licinio in a raised tone that he knew about his antics in the girls' dormitory. After threatening to follow the boy, he left. Here his friend appeared. Licinio asked Aja to leave his hiding place. The acquaintance turned out to be strange, but the miracle did not end there. A friend of hers began to complain that a book had been stolen from him. The conversation began by asking if Licinio had given the book to Mrs. Ruth. The girl felt that she had fallen on some kind of fire, and the fire was growing. Mahiran Rochestinen, that was the name of the friend of her new acquaintance, listened to the excuse very patiently. Since everyone knew he had been caught in the girls' dormitory, Miss Ruth threatened to tell her parents, and he made up for it with Mahiran's book. Their quarrel continued. One said that it was a rare book that was printed only in Caldrogan. The other promised that he would get it, because he had a friend there. Mahiran forbade Licinio to say the name of the book. At this time, Asha stood dumbfounded, only listening to one, then the other, and their arguments. After the quarrel, the friends returned to the young student. Mahiran said he was sorry for his friend's behavior, and that he is usually a nice guy. A new friend offered to go to her dormitory. Miss Ruth got the book, so everything will be fine. Mahiran, hearing about the book, exploded again. At least pretending that you are sorry or ashamed. Indeed, Ms. Ruth has arranged everything. Asha reached the room, and all she needed now was a bed and silence. Incredible pleasure from silence. I went through the names. Licinio Kaizu. So he is a relative of the Kaizu we met at the lake. Finally, the girl remembered. The next day, she cautiously asked about that day at the lake. Turns out Grandpa was there, injured on that trip, now bedridden. The girl remembered how Kilt said that his wound was not fatal, but he was in a lot of pain. Once again, she confirmed that it is better not to mention the name of Kilt's. And it's better for the ring not to know that Kaizu's great-grandson is studying at the academy, because he will immediately bring her home. She decided to just keep silent. A new day, new friends, so much unknown, you want to know everything. And Licinio seems to be a good guy. In the evening, she sat down to write to the teacher, told me that it was more difficult to get used to than it seemed, and that everything she learned was different here, both in the classroom and beyond. Then she crossed out everything and wrote that Yefrangir is wonderful at this time of year, and that the lectures are incredibly interesting. I didn't want to write the truth so that he wouldn't be sad, but I didn't want to deceive either and crumpled this letter. She never wrote, struggling with thoughts between the truth and the desire not to upset him. I remembered the first lecture. Everyone was talking to each other, and she was a stranger in the class and sat away from everyone. She heard that someone was calling her, turned around. The only familiar face in the whole of Ifrangir was Licinio, and next to her was Mahiran. She was happy. She breathed a sigh of relief. Then the door opened. The teacher came in, immediately started the lesson. They started by remembering how to make a stone glow, to break it into pairs. Asa did not have a partner, and when a young man approached her, she immediately agreed, introduced herself, and said that she had just transferred to this class. The teacher handed out the stones, but the young man did not say his name, but Asha did not ask. Looking at the stone, she remembered how long ago the ring had taught her, and the stone was so similar to that one. As soon as the stone touched her palm, it began to glow, and she simply told the teacher that she had done it. But the reaction of her classmates surprised her. They all turned to her as one and looked as if she had done something forbidden. The glow from her stone covered the entire room and escaped through the windows of the auditorium. The students of this academy had never seen such a glow. After class, she met the professor. He warned that the Asterians were not very friendly to the mages of the north. In the meantime, he offered to take a stick and an emblem. Asha remembered that Kilt said that they don't like hereditary magicians who use pure magic here, so she will use it. Meanwhile, an investigation was being conducted in the class. Everyone was asking each other who she was, or was she from the north? New acquaintances were also stunned. Mahiran asked what she had forgotten in their class, to which Licinio replied that he had heard of a special admission for Asi. When Asha entered the audience, Licinio approached and quietly asked if she was a hereditary mage. The girl bowed her head and said that she did not hide it. To say that her friend's reaction surprised her is an understatement. He was delighted with this news. The young man remembered that her teacher used magic without a wand. Asha confirmed that she had never used attributes. She had forgotten that they were needed here. Mahiran was from the north, but he used magic with attributes, and what Asha did stunned him. These two were the only ones who supported her. Others stayed away. I sat down to write a letter again. Today I firmly decided to write about two friends. She described Licinio as a good fellow who treats her like anyone else, and Mahiran as a nobleman from Keldrogan, polite as a prince. She also asked to congratulate her grandfather Kazkan and Prem. Finally, she managed to write a postcard in which she did not hide anything. The box was made by hand. Rings swallowed the letter. No one would have guessed that she has mail right in the room. It's an incredible gift. Finally, the uniform was ready, and now it is also a part of this academy. Asha was very proud of studying here. She had dreamed of school and friends for so long. She ceremoniously put on her uniform and went to study with the attributes of a magician. Passing her classmates who were humming merrily, she said hello, but they immediately fell silent. Asha was persuading herself to just go faster and wondered why they had quieted down. Surely something is wrong. What did she do wrong again? These and other questions did not leave her. She felt that her leg buckled and she almost fell. It turned out that one of the boys deliberately put a stepladder and said that he would not make a mistake next time. And then there were remarks that she was a spy, that northern magic was outdated, and that she wanted to steal secrets like Rochestinen. The girl was outraged by this and shouted that she was from Kalincia, which was a completely different country and did not belong to Keldrogan, but the boys still made fun of her. They continued to laugh that she is a peasant and why does she have a wand when she can use magic and so on. This conversation was interrupted by Filian Lumian. She noted that quarrels are prohibited on the school grounds. The guys said it was just a friendly chat. And since the conversation was friendly, Lumian offered to tell the dean about how they welcomed the new student. Very quickly, Asi's new acquaintances left the yard and the girls went down the path together. On the way, Chloe Lumian introduced herself and asked how Asha was doing. Asya remembered the sign on the door and said that they lived nearby, but she had never yelled at her. Nice to meet you. Chloe said that Asha is different from them, but she doesn't do anything to attract attention. Lumian was surprised that she really didn't know. She said that the most majestic aristocrats cannot get here with a special permit, so as not to pass the entrance exams, which she did not pass. But Juris said that I will just transfer kilts. That registration is quite simple, but it turns out to be extremely difficult to get here. Everyone thinks she's a follower of the Ivory Tower, or hiding from King Kaldrogan. No wonder they looked at her like that. Probably everyone thinks that Asha got into it because of bribery. So now we are waiting for the results of her tests. Asha was disappointed. She wanted to disappear. But Chloe said that this attention is power, she shouldn't worry. But the whispering behind her back did not help. Chloe insisted that this is one side of attention. Unpleasant, so you are already familiar with it. But if you turn this attention into admiration, this will be power. Asha looked up and thanked her for her support, asked how she managed to be so balanced, and their conversation continued, as if they had known each other for a long time. When the boys came, Chloe left, and they were delighted that Asha stayed because of her. Everyone in Yefrang here considered her an angel with divine beauty. Asha thought about Chloe's words about attention, that it should be turned into admiration. Fascinated by these words, she wondered if everyone thought so. The test results were already available. Everyone went to study them. The disappointed girl stood in front of the board, not understanding why she got the second place. While everyone was whispering with envy about her results, she scolded herself, thinking that she had missed after all. Had she studied everything? She is a student of the ring, must be in first place. She gave herself an instruction not to embarrass the teacher and immediately went to repeat the material she had passed. But before that, she wanted to visit the kitten to whom she was already accustomed and fed him often. And now she brought him a delicacy, and the kitten purred and was flattered he liked to be stroked. Here she heard her name and turned back. The young man said he was Dalkian Amadeo. There was no chance to continue as Asha blurted out that she could see from his face that he wanted to criticize her, and that he doesn't like her because she's a hereditary magician and a transferred student, and that I'm a commoner annoys you at all, because the school is for nobles. The young man listened, but immediately replied that she had not guessed all three of her guesses. She countered that she was waiting for a fourth reason that she didn't know about before. He understood that there would be no conversation, and quietly said that in the future she would not allow him to be the first, to pay more attention to grades. After these words, Amadeo turned and left. Asha stood shocked and did not understand what had happened. Lunval Amadeo was a pioneer who introduced the people of Aster to magic, the founder of Yefrangir and Dean for many years. So Dalkian Amadeo is his grandson. That's why the name sounded so familiar, the girl reasoned while having lunch with a friend. Her friends wanted to distract her from studying at least during lunch, but when she burst into a scream, she blurted out that she should be the first. Must be better. How does Dalkian manage to be perfect? Even her teacher is not perfect. He can spend a year looking for his pen. Then she exhaled and said that she also cooks poorly. The friends understood why Asha was nervous and recommended to just think of Dalkian as a fool, because he is a drunk turkey, and all the girls fall for him. The crown of the young aristocracy. It's ugly because appearance has nothing to do with sympathy. The girl was torn from the inside by deliberate self-deception, and she asked Lucinio what girls he liked. After all, not only beautiful faces like Chloe? And then the young man thought, and the truth is he likes girls with real feelings. Kind, sincere, and smiling, necessarily fair-haired. Asya continued to be indignant, and her last phrase that she would not like someone like Dalkian in this life brought Lucinio back to their conversation. When he looked up at the girl as if a second breath had opened, he realized that he likes people like her. No, he likes her. A new day was beginning. The stars gradually disappeared, first the smallest, then the big ones. The rays of the sun slowly covered an increasingly large area. Finally came the answer to the letter from the ring, the long-awaited light on this magical box, the notification of the postcard. Asya did not have time to read. Chloe was standing on the threshold. Since then, they managed to become friends. I came to say goodnight. She could not hold back the news about her acquaintance with Amadeo, and shared her negative impression of this meeting. Chloe listened with a smile, then said that he could be polite and tactful, he wasn't as bad as he seemed. But Asha saw him differently, and realizing that Amadeo liked her friend, she said that she wanted someone nice for her, and that the marriage was not by chance, that she would live happily. The girls had an evening conversation in which they told each other sacred truths, wished each other only good. In the letter, Kiltz wrote about the grandfather who has a backache and Prem, who misses her, that they were sending their greetings. He wrote that he was happy that she had friends. He hopes that she will find valuable experience in Yefrangira, to ask for help if needed, and that will wait for her answer with impatience. The morning seemed cool and Lucinio grumbled that the northerners were fine. They were used to it and he was chilled to the bone. Asha mocked him and compared him to a grandfather who sleeps with red-hot stones, so that his bones don't hurt from the cold. Mahiran came up and interrupted their conversation, shared the news. He was taking lessons from Professor Muslan. He was interested in the armory business. There are very few magicians who improve weapons, and he has been interested in this direction for a long time. He wants to become one of the few experts in the field. If you use Aster's secret technology, you can also set up mass production. The girl was interested, because his family is the ancient family of the Kaldrogan sword. Mahiran even studied the art of swordsmanship, even holding a wand like a sword. I really liked his idea. Asya praised him for his choice and that his core was stable and the amount of mana was correct. The young man thanked for the flattering praise. There was whispering here. The students surrounded Amadeus. The magic sword he created was flawless, and Mahiran was also interested in the sword. Asi's whole being resisted. She admitted that he could be an ideal magician, but for her, he was an unpleasant person. To distract myself, I asked a friend to help me practice magic. Of course he agreed, and he was delighted with what he saw. Admired the magic of hereditary magicians who could possess all the elements. Here the girl asked if he tried to use other elements. Despite the fact that the tests showed that his element is water, Mahiran did not even think of such a thought, but she offered to try it and passed on the spell. The surprised young man thanked. Asya has always been interested in why the inhabitants of Aster do not believe in the theory of 5 elements, and thus differ from the magicians of the north. Her reflections affirmed the idea that the 5th element acts as a catalyst that unites all the elements. Magic is the result of interaction between people and the world. If the caster is not taken into account, the concept of magic would cease to exist. So the 5th element is a magician and acts as a point of intersection of these elements. And as long as the magician believes that all elements are open to him, so it will be. And in Yafrang here they teach to interact with only one element. But why? We came to the conclusion that it is more difficult to master all the elements than to improve in interaction with one. Asha remembered the words of Kiltz, that in Aster you can only learn practical knowledge of how to serve aristocrats. But still, she did not agree. She was looking for a book for Mahiran in the library, but she tripped and Amadeo picked up the book. However, looking at the tall man, he said that he was the first to take this book. The girl's indignation knew no bounds, although she tried to control herself. After a pause, she exhaled slowly, then inhaled slowly and asked what he wanted for this book. The young man looked at the book, then at the girl and asked with surprise why did she need an introduction to the advanced theory of elements. Realizing that it would not be possible to get the book without a conversation, she silently turned and started walking away. Amadeo said that the book was not interesting to him and called Asha. It is better not to know what kind of storm was in her mind now. She turned around and shouted for him to get off the hook. The young man immediately jumped to her and pressed her against the bookcase. Asha cursed. I asked why she avoids him, and she shouted because he hates her. When Amadeo said it wasn't, she exclaimed that he was offended that her name was next to his on the board. She could see his reaction. She asked him to leave because she no longer intends to argue. She wants to leave. The young man withdrew and gave the opportunity to go, and then offered to compete in the winter exams. For some reason, he couldn't just let her go. The girl stopped, thought for a few seconds, then turned around and asked why they were trying. The offer surprised her and she did not hide it. For them, it would be a defense of the honor of their teachers. He would confirm the correctness of the development of magic initiated by the dean. It is the magic of the north. Asha said that she does not understand why he hates her so much, but if she wins, she asks him never to talk to her again. This made the boy very upset. He hoped to get to know her better in this way. He did not understand why she was so hostile, but he agreed. Winter. Bare tree branches shook with snow. Frosty nights were replaced by no less frosty days. Time passed steadily, and it drew closer to the upcoming exam. An unexpected message. There will be no winter exam. From being replaced by a practical lesson from Professor Flinorf, he received a batch of something interesting. Students talked among themselves. Although the class was graduating and they had already seen a lot, they had never seen anything like dragon eggs, only smaller. In front of them was a Upeka egg. Upek is a distant relative of the dragon. If it is more convenient, it can be considered a subspecies of the dragon. So task for the winter semester. Open the egg and provide a report on the observation. Questions poured in. The professor warned that she does not recommend that students watch it hatch. Flanorf showed what happens to the victims of Upeka. What she described did not please the students. The students began to whisper. Everyone was horrified by the sight of the eggs and the idea that they might hatch. They took them very carefully. Friends were sitting next to each other. As always, Licinio humorously said that the exams also have a bloody component, and the northern mages might not like it. Mahiran pondered. Maybe the Asterians want to say that the secret will be known? But UP women in the north are considered very obedient. Why was it described differently? Asha was upset by such a task because there is a living being there, and they offer to kill it by opening the egg. Although it is not a dragon, but only a subspecies. The girl hesitated for a long time, but the feeling of guilt won and she decided to come up with something for the report. Probably the argument with Amadeo will not be in her favor, But she will not take the life of this creature, and let him be proud of himself. And killing a living being is not for her. Let him call her whatever he wants, even if it's a peasant, it doesn't matter. I decided to incubate it. The expression on her face showed so much confidence in her decision that even Licinio noticed it. He could see that she had already made up her mind. I studied about Yuppie people. From an old book, which is not easy to get, I learned that the Yuppie live in permafrost, and when they grow up, they have 3 pairs of wings. I also learned that the egg is incubated for 2 months, but the incubation process was not written in any available book. She decided to keep him warm, and did not lose hope that he would be able to see this world. 2 months passed, it was time to submit the reports, and Professor Flenorf, looking at the report, Aussie said that she was disappointed that the expectations were too high. Asha was not upset in the slightest, because the whole report was a fiction, the fruit of her wild imagination. She pretended to be upset that she couldn't open the egg. Suddenly she felt someone grab her arm and pull her into a corner. It was Amadeo. He pressed her against the wall and pressed for an answer. Why did she do that? Asha got up every 3 hours to wipe the egg to change the mana stone to a warmer one, worried about the egg so much that she completely forgot about the argument. But the young man hovered over her and asked why she did that. After all, they agreed to compete. Asha said that she made the highest quality report but lost to him, so he was the first and she wants to forget about everything. The boy said, looking her in the eyes, that she was cheating. The professor showed him her report even though she shouldn't have done it, and there was delusional writing. The girl's reaction did not take long and was so violent that Amadeo stopped. He shouldn't have read, it's against the rules. Then she exhaled heavily and told the truth. She did not open the egg at all, she felt sorry for the living creature. Amadeo was even more surprised, because this is a competition. Besides, this is a winter exam. And he said that he studied the skeleton and biological fluids in the egg and even deduced its behavior. It is unclear whether he expected such behavior. But after these words, Asha kindly pushed him and said that she had never met a more despicable person. Licinio said that Amadeo, when they were children, was the only one who could touch a dead animal. Asya, that was exactly what annoyed him, his emotionlessness. But the young man told her that he was not as bad as she thought. There was a case when he had longer hair, looked like a girl. He was offended, but he was such a little angel that I gave him my mother's hairpin. He was so indignant that he threw it in my face. Asha listened to all the stories very carefully and wondered more and more. Does he really have emotions? Maybe he is not so cold-blooded? The young man continued to surprise, telling that they had a fight and only his grandfather made him reconcile with Amadeo. Now they are getting along. Here Asha asked whether Licinio communicates with his grandfather or writes to him. He said that before he even wrote every day that he wanted to return and his grandfather forbade him. But when they met as children, he was so proud that he would study in Yefranghir. The guy was very surprised that she remembered. Asha laughed and said that his enthusiasm with which he talked about the school of magic infected her then, and she always dreamed of getting here. And then Licinio admitted that he had watched for several days before speaking. I hoped that they would be able to become friends. The girl remembered everything that happened to her at the academy and was fascinated by the fact that every day some research was published. Every day something new was invented. The assimilation of magic by humans was astounding. Aster was overwhelmed with development. New tools were invented to make people's lives easier. Aster could be called a place of light and joy for people, and this fascinated her endlessly, the development and learning of new things in order to achieve dreams. But she was confused that Aster's fundamental beliefs about the elements did not allow magic to develop to its full extent. Her understanding of the elements is different. I looked at the egg and thought that magic should be mysterious and hidden. It should not be for everyone and everything. It should remain mysterious. On these thoughts, as if turning to the pitying egg, it remained lonely. Belief that it would hatch gradually receded. It was sad. She remembered the ring, understood that he was right. His magic should be kept a secret. It should not be carried to the masses like Aster's magic. And that's why she won't break the egg and see what's there. There is the magic of a living being. It is better to read a book. I haven't read it in a long time. The girl took a book signed as a report on the physiological effect on the human body of the introduction of magic, prepared by Iscardion, and the handwriting was familiar. A person who does not possess magic comes into contact with a large concentration of mana, which causes the body to resist and eventually dies.
The body, reacting to mana, begins to destroy itself and ultimately brings death.
When mana was injected into those born insensitive to it, they all died. This report is designed to develop countermeasures to this phenomenon. Subject number 9 experiences sharp pain in the eyes after the mana injection, accompanied by ringing in the ears. Asha read these reports. She did not want to believe that they were written by Kilts. She did not know him as such, and did not believe that he could harm the unfortunate. But the handwriting was his. Thoughts that it couldn't be her teacher were replaced by arguments that you can see a lot of cruelty here, and he has been living alone for so long. Soon there was to be a holiday of the Foundation Day, and friends discussed that there is no such holiday in the north, but it is more likely because the Asterians try to be different. The talk of the celebration reminded Asa of the unfinished business, and she said goodbye to Mahiran until next week. Having heard that the girl was going to Erinville to get gifts from home in such a snowy weather, he offered to see her and help her. She agreed. Seeing that the teacher sent such a gift for the day of the foundation, Asha was a little disappointed, because it was also a gift for her birthday. Mahiran was surprised that he did not know. He would have prepared a gift. She said that she did not know when her birthday was, so she decided that it would be on the day of its foundation. Such a message took the young man's breath away. He apologized for being tactless, but Asya laughed. No need to apologize. The girl said that she lived with her stepfather, who found her as a baby on the beach, and then she met a teacher and he took her away, so she does not know who her parents are. To change the subject, I asked if he received a gift for the day of the foundation. The young man stuttered, but their conversation was already open, so he admitted that he should not wait for a gift because in his family he is considered worthless, not like everyone else. He also frankly told everything that he did not become a knight and went to study in another country. Because of this, he is disliked. Asya wondered why he didn't become a knight. Mahiran cannot use one hand. In everyday life, it is not inconspicuous and does not interfere. But in battle, the handicap is serious. The young man added that he personally believes that if Khaldrogan does not learn to use magic as an Aster, he will be destroyed. And he said this only to her. After thinking about it, she asked if he was sure of his thoughts. Does he believe that Aster will start a war against Khaldrogan? I received an affirmative answer. All the magicians have already gone to the other side of the world, and Aster will use this moment to increase her power. And it is already being prepared. He said that the student in whose place Asya studies was excluded because she behaved very aggressively in relation to the war. Enerly de Armand was the name of that student, and this was her room. You should ask Chloe about her later. She began to unpack gifts. I found a carrot cake. The signature for the star appeared to be made by Prem. On the reverse side, there was an inscription by grandfather. Helpers. I also found a gift from the ring. An incredibly soft robe, probably woven from magic like the previous robe. While enjoying the gifts, I thought I heard some rustling, turned around, and the egg was cracked. She froze, was afraid to move and even to breathe. This is real magic. The egg hatched. Asha remembered the professor's words that it was dangerous and was very frightened. She was not yet ready for the appearance of a Upeka, but a paw with huge claws appeared. I decided to fend him off with a gift robe, and when he hatched and said, it's something incredible, he is wonderful. What a cute and beautiful creature. Why did the professor say such mean things about him? It was definitely worth losing the winter competition with Amadeo. This creature is so helpless and so cute. Because of his white color, he was named Aiz. The box lit up, a postcard from Kilts. He seemed disappointed. For the entire time of study, she never came home. There were many letters. I had the strength to write an answer. I didn't want to write about Lixenio while I was thinking about what to write, so as not to disappoint him. Aiz ran up and began to beg for her arms. Asya wrapped him up and decided to go for a walk with him. But he was not comfortable and he kept resisting, wanting to slip out of the blanket. She took him to a place where no one saw him. Ease liked to walk there, and the girl was proud that she was able to incubate him. But something unexpectedly changed his behavior. He began to make noise, run, and hiss. Asha was afraid that they would be exposed, grabbed it and wrapped it up. Then she heard her name. Amadeo was standing near the building. She tried to hide her fear of exposing Ayaz. She stammered and tried to explain. But Azu was already looking over her shoulder, and it was too late to explain anything. The young man smiled and told her not to be afraid. He would not tell anyone. Her eyes became bigger than usual. She couldn't believe what she heard. Was it true? Thanking for the silence, she said that she named him Aiz, which translates as beginning or white snow. There was silence. Only the Yupek hissed warily. Amadeo is even more surprised that Asha knows the ancient language, but she said that only a little when she uses magic. I asked why he came here. The young man admitted that since no one comes here, he practices magic here. Perfect place. And it always seemed to her that he did everything perfectly the first time, that there was no need to hone his skills. It turns out, I was wrong. Amadeo was surprised again. He thought the same about her, because she is a hereditary mage. Here, Asya already denied that her magic is not perfect. You need to prepare. After such frankness, they promised that they would keep the secret of the magic practice place, and the secret of Aiz. They shook each other's hands. Probably only these two huge secrets were able to unite two fiercely conflicting magicians, with different origins and views on magic. Friends in the library discuss the issue of building a railway. Minerals are needed, so Aster wants a contract for their extraction in the north. But why does Aster want to connect the north with the south by rail? What secrets of the continent does he want to discover? The north and the south used to be friendly, but an incident changed everything. Licinio said that he was on the Crescent Peninsula, there even day and night. The sea there is black, not like near his house. Grandfather was gifted the house by the sea along with the title when he rendered a favor to Kaldrogan. Asya did not hold back and said that she would like to meet his grandfather, Count Kaizu. However, in reality, I wished that this name would never be mentioned. And there were conversations about the ball, and here and there they decided who would go with whom. Preparations for the celebration of the Foundation Day were in full swing. Some decorated the halls, while others moved items that were no longer needed to a hiding place. Asya was on her way to Licinio when she saw an interesting picture, one of the students inviting him to go with her to the ball. Her friends were waiting nearby, cheering her on. Finally, she got up the courage, but the young man saw Asya, stood up, and said that he would not be able to go to the ball, that he is already going with another girl, but thanks for her attention. Tried to refuse as gently as possible. A friend approached him and said that he was very popular, but she had not paid attention to it before. Asya asked the same. Who is he going with? The young man has not yet invited her. After a moment of silence, he said that he wanted to invite Asya to go to the ball with him. I did not expect such a turn of events. She was very surprised, but agreed with pleasure. Licinio immediately began to ask about the color of the dress, so that he would wear the same suit, that it could be golden like her hair. He began to dream. And Asya did not even think about the dress, and I didn't know where to take it or buy it or order it. She had never attended a ball before. All options for ordering nearby or far away were rejected. Time is short, the only way out is to ask Chloe for help. Asya ran to look for Chloe, but she could not find her after going around all the auditoriums. Amadeo stopped her while passing by one audience. He wanted to talk about the spring festival, but she was so preoccupied, she said she didn't have time now. Amadeo already looked unsure, which was strange, and Asia's refusal had plunged him into sadness altogether. The girl noticed this and decided to ask later. Finally, the search was successful. A friend rushed to Chloe with shouts for help in finding a dress for the ball, because she has nothing but a uniform. Hat, here exactly at the address. Grabbing her hand, Chloe pulled her friend to her, opened the closet, and told her to choose. There was no limit to Asya's surprise at the choice. When the selection was complete, Chloe said that everyone would want to dance with her when she went to the ball. So suited was the dress she had chosen. When the ball started, everyone whispered that Chloe Lumien and Amadeo were a couple. And then Amadeo appeared. The girls who adored him held their breath. He approached Chloe and invited her to accompany him. All the cheerleaders almost squealed with envy. A beautiful couple. Licinio called out to Asya. When she returned, he began to lose himself in words which no one noticed before, then collected himself and said that he looked incredible. The whole evening he did not leave his companion, danced with her non-stop. When the music died down, he held her hand as if she had to run away. And then Licinio informs that a friend of grandfather has come and he wants to introduce them. But Asya flatly refused, and he left. Amadeo suddenly appeared. Chloe disappeared somewhere and he went out to get some fresh air. Points are incredibly draining, they both agreed. The young man said that the dress suits her very well and that she looks beautiful. Struck by the compliment and especially the intonation with which it was said, She remained silent. Several days have passed since the celebration. The suitcases are packed and the hot time was ready. The invitation to tea flew past her ears. Asha thought about the ball. Eurus returned to reality and asked to hand over the gift. I happily agreed. The girl had been worried about the question for a long time, and she dared to ask about the report signed by Asgardion. Professor Eurus said he was the one who put him there. He's wonderful, but that's only part of it. That's all he's allowed to take out. But why conduct such cruel experiments at all? And Aragon's artifacts, which give eternal life, have anything to do with this? Eurus replied that he and the dean had developed a mechanism for immortality, thanks to the large number of artifacts excavated from the labyrinth. But what is the purpose of these experiments? What is all this for? The answer stunned. Eurus said that they wanted to create immortal soldiers. In the morning, all three were in the library, solving problems with exams. Mahiran reminded Licinio that it was time to return the book he had given to Mrs. Ruth. While the librarian was urging them to speak more quietly to them, Amadeo sat down silently. No one said a word, but a question mark shone in every eye. He took a free seat next to Asi, put down his notes, and began to prepare for the exam. Everyone looked at each other, and there was silence around. Time passed and Ace grew. Asha fed him everything she could bear. He liked it, and he ate fossils. He probably likes them because they contain magic. That's what Amadeo said. He's right. The bright light of the box interrupted his thoughts. A postcard arrived. Kiltz wrote how they are waiting for her arrival, how Prem and grandfather are missing, and also that he understood that her most vulnerable trait is kindness, but that is the power that gives you wings. Sometimes it seemed that on these wings, the letter seemed different from the previous ones. Then Kiltz wrote about the Upeka, reminded her about the book she was reading. There, the eye of the dragon looks after Ingram, reminded me of the dragon that became a mainland. And the Upes chose not to chase the bird, so they did not become a mainland and are classified as a subspecies of dragons. Another opinion is that they stayed because they wanted to, and another opinion is that they are part of the dragons that have returned to protect people. A Saita fly in the sky. The results were posted on the board. Amadeo was the first, and Asen's result was 13. I decided to congratulate Amadeo. Licinio was going to the meeting, and she asked him if he had seen the winner of the exams. The young man said that soon new students will come and he is helping. They went to look for it together. The young man seemed sad and said that she had been thinking about Dalkian a lot lately. Asha smiled, answered what he thought. A few days later, as soon as she entered the room, Ace rushed to meet her. Asha gladly met him, caught him to take her in his arms. He purred. A knock was heard. She opened the door. Mrs. Ruth was standing on the threshold. Asha was indescribably frightened, and the lady said that her name was Licinio Kaizu. She also asked to clean the room and close the door. Asha breathed a sigh of relief. Asa was not noticed. Yupei came out from behind the curtain and she grabbed him and held him close. What a smart person he is. He hides and is silent. She almost kissed him. The girl needs to go home, but he will not be able to sit quietly on the train. I imagined how he would start flying there. Chloe did not like the idea that she had come. She did not know what to feed him or how to behave. Ace wasn't thrilled with the idea either. Met Licinio on the street, he took the book from Mrs. Ruth and gave it to Asa to read. When she realized that it was Mahiran's book, she returned it. Here Licinio said he was inviting her to Erinville in the summer. Of course she agreed and asked if Mahiran would go. But the young man said that only the two of them would go. He would like to spend this time only with her, to make it just their day. Of course she agreed. Probably he wanted to tell something in private, and here they can be eavesdropped. Asia was going to buy a present for the house, and Licinio offered wine from Clodogan. The idea seemed successful, so they did it. The young man finally asked her if she would agree to come to him in the summer. He would show her the area by the sea. Asha immediately thought of Count Kaisa. She thanked for the invitation, but she really missed her family and wants to spend the summer there. And she also asked not to tell her relatives about her. He said that she does not need to explain anything. He understands everything. Licinio leaned over and said that he didn't mean to say it that way, but that's how it turned out. He will not tell anyone about the girl who lives in his heart. The conversation was interrupted by the appearance of Amadeo. In his hands was a book about elemental magic, and Asya asked something about the book and something else. Here Amadeo asked since when these two were so close. A second pause was interrupted by Asha's chirping that they were just friends, and it was time for her train. Licinio took her to the station. I waited for her to get into her car and said goodbye until next year. We will wait for this meeting. The train started. The girls sat and thought about the meeting with the ring. Kazkan probably waited for Prem as he always does in a blooming garden.